do not understand the real cost when you first marry her. Not when strangers start recognizing her before they notice you standing beside her. Not when old clips, old headlines, and old comments begin surfacing the second your wedding photos hit the internet. You understand it one night at your mother's table when she sets down her chopsticks, looks at you very carefully, and asks in a voice so gentle it hurts, "Can a woman ever really leave a life the whole world refuses to let her outgrow?" That is the moment you realize you did not just marry her. You married her name, her past, and every stranger who still thinks they own a piece of it. 2 years earlier, your life had been small in a way that was almost respectable. You were 30, working in operations for a mid-sized hotel group. The kind of job built on fixing problems before richer people had to notice them. You handled scheduling failures, supplier mistakes, guest complaints, staffing gaps, broken air conditioning, and every other quiet disaster that keeps expensive spaces feeling effortless. You were good at it because you were good at being useful. Your apartment was clean, your bills were paid, and your mother called every Sunday to ask why you still lived like a man, waiting for his real life to start later. You meet her at a private industry event on a Thursday night in Tokyo, though meet is too gentle a word for what it feels like. The room is full of actors, producers, sponsors, managers, and people who speak to one another with the careful brightness of professionals who know every table might matter. You are only there because your hotel is handling part of the hospitality side. You are meant to stay smooth, invisible, forgettable. Then you see her standing near the far bar in a black dress, listening to someone with the expression of a woman who has spent years being looked at and has grown tired of most of it. At first, you only know that she is beautiful in a way that does not ask for help. Not loud, not eager, just self-contained. Then someone near you says her name, and the room changes shape inside your head. You know it. Of course you know it. Too many other people do. She is not just another guest. She is a Japanese AV actress whose face has lived in too many corners of the internet for anonymity to still be possible. You should look away after that. You do not. The actual conversation begins because a producer who has had too much whiskey mistakes you for someone else, complains about a seating mix-up, and you step in before it gets louder. She watches the whole thing, amused but not unkind. When the producer leaves, she looks at your name tag and says, "You handled that better than the men who are paid to be charming." Her voice is calmer than you expect. Softer, too. You tell her charm is unreliable under pressure. She smiles, and for 1 second, she stops looking like a public image and starts looking like a woman who has been bored for a very long time. That is the first dangerous thing about her. Not her beauty, not her fame. The fact that once she starts speaking to you, you stop feeling like you are standing in front of a known name and start feeling like you are standing in front of a real person hidden inside it. By the end of the night, you know she is sharper than people expect, funnier than her photographs ever suggest, and more tired than anyone in the room would guess. When you finally leave, you tell yourself the attraction is temporary, impossible, and stupid. Then her name appears on your phone the next afternoon, and your life begins moving toward the exact thing you should have known would never stay simple. She asks you to dinner 2 nights later, and you spend the whole day pretending this is a normal thing that happens to normal men. It is not. Women like her do not usually text men like you after one conversation at a work event. The restaurant she chooses is small and quiet, hidden above a street you have passed 100 times without noticing. She is already there when you arrive, one hand around a glass of water as if she has nowhere else to be. That unsettles you. Someone with her face and her kind of public life should feel guarded. Instead, she feels precise. The first surprise is that she does not flirt the way men expect a woman with her reputation to flirt. She does not perform boldness. She asks about your work, your schedule, the exhaustion of fixing other people's problems, while pretending none of them affect you. When you ask if she ever gets tired of being recognized, she laughs once and says, "Recognition is easy. Misunderstanding is exhausting." It is such a clean sentence that you think about it for the rest of the night. She is giving you something rarer than charm, honesty. Dinner turns into coffee. Coffee turns into late walks through quieter streets where she wears a cap and a plain coat and still carries the same impossible presence. You learn that she hates sweet cocktails, sleeps badly in hotel rooms, and takes off her earrings the second she sits down anywhere private. She learns that you call your mother back even when you are tired, and that you still iron shirts the night before work, like a man who believes neatness can protect him from disappointment. She notices everything. That is the dangerous part. Not her face, not her fame. The way she studies you as if the small details are the real story. But the pressure of her past never stays outside the room for long. At one restaurant, a man leaving the bar stares too long, then nudges his friend. Later, someone asks for a photo and tries to pretend it is casual. Online, her name is still a trapdoor. You type it once, then hate yourself for doing it, then keep scrolling anyway. Old clips, old comments, strangers talking about her as if she were a category instead of a person. The next time you see her, the shame of that search is still in your body. She notices immediately. You looked, she says. You admit it. She nods and says, everyone does. The question is whether that's all they see after. You want to say no. You want to say the woman in front of you is sharper, sadder, funnier, and more controlled than anything those people understand. But the truth is more humiliating. You do see her. You also see what the world has seen. Part of falling for her is realizing how hard it is to separate a woman from the public life strangers think they know. Then one night, in the back seat of a car taking you nowhere urgent, she leans her head against the window and asks, "Do you think you're curious about me? Or about surviving what people would say if you loved me openly?" It is the first time she says the real thing out loud. Not fame, not reputation, judgment. By then you already know you are in trouble. The relationship is becoming real at exactly the speed the outside world becomes harder to ignore. By the time she meets your mother, the relationship has become too real to call temporary. That is why the evening feels dangerous before anything goes wrong. Your mother chooses the nicer plates. She cuts fruit nobody asked for. She keeps smoothing the tablecloth as if neatness can prevent discomfort from entering the room. The woman you love arrives in a dark coat with her hair tied back, carrying a box of sweets and the calm expression of someone who has spent years walking into rooms charged with judgment. Your mother smiles, invites her in, pours tea, asks the ordinary questions first. Work, family, the weather. For 20 careful minutes, everyone behaves like, this is a normal dinner and not the moment 3 different lives are trying to decide how honest they can afford to be. Then your mother asks how public attention has affected her. It is a polite question with a knife hidden inside it. She does not say career. She does not say past. She certainly does not say the thing both of you know she means. The woman across from her understands anyway. You see it in the way her fingers tighten once around the cup before relaxing. She answers with more grace than the room deserves. She says attention teaches people to look at the loudest version of your life and ignore everything quieter. Your mother nods, but too slowly. You know that nod. It means she is listening and resisting at the same time. What hurts is not cruelty. Cruelty would almost be easier to fight. It is the effortful politeness, the carefulness, the sense that everyone at the table is stepping around a hole deep to name directly. Later, after dinner, when your mother is washing dishes, she asks in a voice that never rises whether love can survive, when the whole world has seen a woman in ways a husband is supposed to believe are private. That is the question you have been avoiding in your own head, just spoken aloud by someone who loves you enough to wound you honestly. You do not answer right away because anything quick would sound weak. Instead, you dry a plate and feel the shame of it. Your mother has named something you have been trying to outlove before you understood it. Outside, she is waiting near the stairwell, coat on, posture straight, as if she knows this is the part where men become uncertain. When you tell her what your mother said, she does not flinch. She does not cry. She just looks at you with a tiredness so controlled it feels older than either of you. Then she says, This is why I asked if you were curious about me or about surviving me. You start to protest, but she lifts one hand and stops you. If you leave now, she says, you can still tell yourself you respected me enough not to make promises you couldn't carry. That is the fork. Not videos, not comments. Not the strangers who still think they know her body better than her mind. The fork is standing there in a dim hallway with a woman you love, being offered a clean exit by the person who would have the most right to hate you for taking it. You should leave. You know that in the logical part of yourself that believes a manageable life is the same thing as a good one. But love has made the problem less abstract than judgment. Leaving now would not feel like wisdom. It would feel like cowardice dressed as self-protection. So you step closer, take her hand, and tell her the truth. None of this scares you as much as becoming the kind of man who lets the world decide who she is before he does. Marriage does not save the relationship from the past. It gives the past a front door, a mailing address, and a legal name to enter under. The wedding itself is small because both of you know spectacle would only feed the part of the world that already thinks her life belongs to public consumption. A ceremony, few guests, your mother attends in careful silence. 2 friends sign papers. She wears ivory, not white, and looks less like a fantasy than a woman standing still inside a decision she understands better than anyone else in the room. When she says yes, it is not breathless or dramatic. It is calm, solemn, as if she knows marriage will not erase anything behind her. It will only decide who stands beside her while the old noise keeps knocking. For a little while, married life feels almost stubbornly ordinary, and that ordinariness becomes its own kind of miracle. She leaves damp hair on your pillow after late showers. You make coffee while she stands barefoot in the kitchen. Reading headlines she pretends not to care about. She steals your shirts. You buy groceries, argue about lamps, forget laundry in the machine, and learn the private rhythm of another person's exhaustion. In those rooms with the blinds half closed and the phones turned face down, she is just your wife. Funny when she is tired, quiet when she is hurt, sharper in the morning than she is at night. The internet does not disappear, but sometimes the apartment is small enough to make it feel far away. Then the outside world remembers the marriage exists, and privacy starts dying in pieces. Old photos get reposted. Message boards wake up. A wedding picture becomes an excuse for strangers to talk about her body, your face, your motives, your parents, your future children. Men who would never dare speak that way in a room with either of you start doing it freely from behind usernames and profile pictures of anime characters or expensive cars. A coworker recognizes her from an article and becomes too friendly in the way men get when they think intimacy can be stolen from reputation. One of your cousins sends a link just so you know what people are saying. As if knowledge is ever neutral once it enters a marriage like this. The worst part is how inconsiderate judgment becomes when it starts dressing itself as concern. Your mother asks if children would be safer in another city. A friend tells you he supports you no matter what her history is, as if support can arrive carrying that much contempt and still count as kindness. Even people trying to be decent become exhausting because decency still assumes there is something to overlook. She notices every shift in your face, every extra second before you answer, every time some stranger's opinion makes your jaw tighten. One night she says softly, "I knew the internet would keep doing this. I didn't know marriage would make you read silence so differently." It is one of the few times her voice sounds close to defeated. That is when you understand what marriage has really changed. Before, the judgment was aimed at her and you could stand beside it, protective, angry, idealistic. Now it enters your shared life through groceries, family meal, dinners, work functions, and mornings that should have belonged only to the two of you. Being her husband means you do not get to fight only for love. You have to fight for ordinary life itself, for the right to let breakfast stay breakfast, and not turn into evidence in someone else's fantasy about who she used to be. The apartment is still warm. She still reaches for you in her sleep. But marriage has made the pressure permanent. The past no longer visits. It has learned where you live. The hardest part is not her past. By the time you understand your marriage clearly, the past is almost the least interesting thing in the room. The hardest part is what the world keeps doing to it. People talk about the past as if it is a fixed object. It is not. In your life with her, the past behaves more like weather. It drifts in through screens, family dinners, careless jokes, and the tiny pauses people leave before saying her name. It changes the temperature of rooms that should have belonged only to the present. For a while, you think endurance will solve it. If you love her steadily enough, if you answer your mother patiently enough, if you ignore the comments and avoid the articles, maybe the noise will starve. It does not. It only changes form. The world gets bored with outrage and becomes curious instead, which is sometimes worse. A neighbor asks what she did before marriage back in Japan. A man at a company dinner smiles too long and says she seems familiar. An old classmate messages after years of silence and pretends he only wants to congratulate you. Every version of it says the same thing. Some part of her still belongs to public memory more than it belongs to herself. You expect anger to define this stage of your marriage. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you want to break the mouths of men who speak about your wife with the confidence of people who confuse access with ownership. But anger burns hot and clean. The feeling that lasts longer is exhaustion. The exhausting part is having to decide whether a moment deserves confrontation or simply survival. Whether a relative's question comes from ignorance or cruelty, whether silence is wisdom or surrender. One night, after a dinner where someone was polite enough to avoid saying the wrong thing and obvious enough to say it with his eyes, you come home and find her sitting on the kitchen floor in one of your old t-shirts, eating strawberries straight from the carton. It is such an ordinary image that it nearly breaks you. She looks up and asks, "Are you tired of defending me?" The question is quiet, like she has asked it in her own head enough times to stop fearing the answer. You sit beside her and realize the truth is more complicated than either of you deserves. You are tired, yes, but not of her, never of her. You are tired of a world that keeps dragging her backward and then acting surprised that the drag leaves marks on both of you. That is the point where the marriage changes for the last time. Not because the pressure ends. It does not. Both of you stop pretending the goal is to outlive judgment until it disappears. It will not disappear. There will always be someone who remembers the wrong part of her louder than the real part standing in front of them. So the goal changes. A private world stubborn enough to remain human anyway. You begin protecting small things with almost religious care. Morning coffee before either phone is touched. Grocery runs at hours when nobody notices. The right to let dinner stay dinner. The right to let your wife be funny, irritated, messy, intelligent, half awake, fully herself without public imagination trying to flatten her back into an old role. In the end, that is the real marriage, not rescuing her, not pretending the past never happened. It is choosing, over and over, to treat the woman in front of you as more real than the version strangers still consume in their heads. You thought marrying her would mean accepting a difficult history. What it actually meant was learning that love cannot erase exposure, shame, or judgment. It can only refuse to let those things have the final word. And some days, in a quiet kitchen with the phones turned face down and your wife laughing at something stupid only the two of you would understand, that refusal feels stronger than every headline that came before it.